still can't believe this happened, but guess what? It did. Iron Man beat Magneto, and seemingly handily so as well. Although I would like to add in here that I think he, to a certain extent, got lucky. Magneto and Iron Man faced off during Avengers vs. X-Men. As the Phoenix Force was headed towards Earth, Iron Man squared off with Magneto, who attempted to argue that Iron Man was falling on the wrong side of history here, persecuting mutants just as Magneto had so long ago been persecuted years ago in Germany. However, Iron Man wasn't hearing this kind of logic and turned his back on Magneto, saying that he and the X-Men were the ones threatening all of humanity with their willingness to welcome the returning Phoenix Force. If you're wondering why I'm considering Magneto a hero, by the way, on this list, that is because he was a hero at this time. He has been sometimes he's a villain, sometimes he's a hero, and this time around he was actually working alongside the X-Men. Iron Man managed to arm himself with a non-metallic suit and pull off a few metallic tricks of his own to get in a few good hits to boot. But at the end of the day, Magneto was distracted by the Phoenix Force, which he sent snuffing out an entire planet on its way to Earth. And this made him give up the fight and kind of question even what side he was on, instead hoping that Iron Man would find the Scarlet Witch, whose help Magneto believed Tony would actually need. So really, the fight wasn't necessarily Tony fully winning, it was kind of like Magneto deciding, maybe I shouldn't be in this fight. Iron Man made short work of humbling Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. Reed is known as the team's leader, Mr. Fantastic, who is known not just for his stretching powers, but more often for his brilliant intellect, being considered one of the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. When Iron Man becomes a god, he makes everyone as smart as he is normally, which for Reed is actually considered a downgrade since he was actually smarter than Tony. This means that in trying to give him a gift, Stark actually lowered Reed's IQ instead of increasing it. Unintentional humble. Tony at least tried to humble the X-Men this time around by comparing lots with them. Not a great move on his part honestly, but hey, he tried at least. This all went down during the first Civil War when he had a chat with Emma Frost, one of his ex-flames. He attempted to compare the Avengers to the X-Men, saying that they also had to deal with a lot of prejudice too. However, while he did attempt to humble Emma into backing down, this actually ended up ultimately backfiring on him as Emma decided to turn up the heat just a notch, causing her to remind him of just how much hate and prejudice mutants had to deal with, including the catastrophic events that happened on Genosha. The Avengers have never had to deal with something on that scale, it's true, so obviously while this was an attempt at a humble, it wasn't completely successful, let's just say. While Tony and James Rhodes are actually known to be fast and best friends in the comics, they don't always see eye to eye. Like when Jim took Iron Man's place for a time and went on to serve as the hero War Machine. The two did not agree in terms of their approach to heroics, and this resulted in tension building between them, which ultimately culminated in a full-on fight. While Rhodes had some pretty scathing criticisms that he threw at Iron Man during the fight, Tony at one point seemed to have the upper hand during the physical altercation, which spanned across both of their series. Fortunately, both of them were spared from doing something boldly permanent to the other that they might regret by Bethany Cave, an ally and love interest of Tony's, who set off an EMP to shut down their suits, systems, and temporarily stop the fight between them. Iron Man majorly humbled the Hulk when he managed to be a part of the group that would send Hulk off-world. This secret superhero group was known as the Illuminati. The Illuminati was a group of superhero geniuses who believed that they best knew how to run the world and decided to operate in secret behind the scenes, making major plays to orchestrate just that. Thinking they were, you know, big know-it-alls, unsurprisingly, many of their plays actually ended up being pretty bad ones that had catastrophic consequences. Case in point, when they decided to send Hulk off-world in order to protect Earth from him. This would end up coming back to bite them in the butt when Hulk returned to Earth, and of course, World War Hulk happened. Axis was a wild time for a lot of heroes out there, but especially, I would say, for Iron Man. During the Axis event, many heroes and villains had their alignments reversed, and Tony even managed to escape his alignment being flipped once more back to normal, from bad back to good, so he would stay bad even after the event. Tony would turn Extremis into a program, like an app, which allowed users to change their physicality at will. At first the app was free, but after getting everyone hooked on it, Stark made it insanely expensive. This prompted Daredevil to confront Stark at his home, explaining that many of the users who could not afford the exorbitant costs were instead turning to a life of crime to help them foot the bill. Iron Man, or Superior Iron Man as he was known at the time, didn't want to hear this though, and so made short work of Matt, kicking Dee Dee out of his home by tossing tossing Matt literally off his balcony. In the MCU, Tony Stark has some pretty big beef with Bucky Barnes, Captain America's former sidekick turned brainwashed assassin super soldier known as the Winter Soldier. Both in the comics and the cinematic universe, it was Bucky Barnes who was behind the assassination of Iron Man's parents, and this is a large part of what drives a wedge between Captain America and Iron Man in the MCU. Although, let's be honest, tensions have always run somewhat high between these two, from even way back in the good old comics days. While Cap seeks to find redemption for Bucky and free him from his programming, Tony is out for revenge, and when he ends up going toe-to-toe with Bucky and his back is up against the wall, literally, he decides to not hold back and ends up blowing off Bucky's arm. His metal arm though, of course, his prosthetic at least, his other arm is okay, and of course, at least this would all be resolved with Bucky becoming a hero and even getting a new arm gifted to him by Black Panther and Wakanda, so in the end it all worked out, but man, what a moment. When Iron Man wants to be, he can be quite savage. Case in point, how he dealt with Spider-Man in the 2005 Iron Man series during Civil War. In issue number 14, Tony at one point faces off with Spider-Man and uses his suit to analyze Peter's Spidey sense. Based on that analysis, he is not only able to make his own version of Spider Sense, but is also able to neutralize and even mess with Spider-Man's. Iron Man then can use this against Spider-Man to misguide him, distracting him with a false warning before easily taking him out. Some of these moments are actually more embarrassing, I feel, for Tony, but I digress. For this one, we're looking to the pages of Civil War II. I know, I'm sorry to take you back to Civil War II, but here we go, here we are, this is what's happening. Here, Tony manages to kidnap the Inhuman precog Ulysses, who was at the center of the Second Civil War, for those that aren't aware of that. Ulysses was basically what the Second Civil War was all about. He could see the future. On Captain Marvel's side, she was like, I think we should persecute people before they've done anything wrong, and on Iron Man's side, he was like, no, we should wait till people actually do bad things before we punish them. Seems reasonable. Iron Man gets into Attilan quiet and stealthily and manages to also quickly get out with Ulysses in tow, all pretty much under the Inhumans' noses, leaving behind a decoy to distract them. By the time they're on to Tony, his plan is already in motion and it's seemingly much too late. He swaps out with the decoy, which explodes in his place, with Iron Man then getting to safety with Ulysses in tow, honestly making all of the Inhumans look pretty embarrassed. Pretty humbled, I'd say. All of the Inhumans. Although, let's talk about someone specifically for our final point here. Honestly, one of the Inhumans that Iron Man makes look the most ridiculous is Karnak. Just this writing, honestly, I feel like makes Karnak look really ridiculous. Poor Karnak. I feel bad for him, actually. I really like him and I think he's a super cool character, and I feel like this fight does not do him justice. His ability is that he can find anyone's weakness. The problem when it comes to fighting Tony, well, Tony claims he just doesn't have any weaknesses. Oh, so ridiculous. Iron Man declares this before blasting and handily defeating Karnak in basically like a couple short panels, but I'm gonna just chalk this one up to the fact that at the time Iron Man was obviously, you know, not within the suit. That was a decoy, so when he says he doesn't have any weaknesses, he might more be referring to the misdirect in regards to the fact that, you know, he isn't actually there at the time, so how can you have weaknesses if you're not present? I guess. Maybe. Maybe that's how that works. Either way, I don't believe that Tony Stark actually has zero weaknesses, but that's what he declared here and it seemed to work out for him, so there you go. That's about it. I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.